You asked for it. Here it is. It's a podcast from Apathetic Enthusiasm.
Coming to you live from a world where food has a first and a last name. For example, my bologna has a first name. It's S-T-E-V-E. And my bologna has a second name. It's S-M-I-T-H. And guess what? This is Interdimensional RSS, the unofficial Rick and Morty podcast.
A little fried Steve Smith with a side of eggs.
And a side of Fran dressing.
Support SAG-AFTRA. Let's get those actors back to work, everybody. Hi, I'm Travis.
Hey everybody, I'm Brandon, and welcome again to Interdimensional RSS, where we talk about your favorite show that we talk about, Rick and Morty. I sounded uncertain there for half a second. I wasn't. I was just, maybe it's not your favorite show, but you still like it a lot enough to listen to us. And either way, we appreciate the hell out of you.
Yeah, I could see somebody that's like listening to this podcast and like, I mean, I like Rick and Morty. I like it as much as the next person, but it's not my favorite show. Obviously, that Suits, streaming on Netflix or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, by Michael Waldron. No. That's the wrestling one. The Fall Guys. No. A Flip Man. No.
Yeah. Welcome everybody. Welcome to the show about Rick and Morty. One of your favorite podcasts, one of your favorite shows. If you want to follow us on social media, we'll whip through these really quickly. We're on X. We're at Rick and Morty Pod. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/Rick and Morty Podcast. We're on Instagram, Rick and Morty Podcast or Rick and Morty Pod. We got both of them because we're greedy. Mm-hmm. You can send us an email, rickandmortypodcast@gmail.com. Or apparently we're on Blue Sky, rickandmortypod.bsky.social. I've never checked that. I didn't even know it existed, but you can follow us right there.
Yeah, we're on there. I set up a profile and then haven't done anything with it.
Have not logged in. Just staking our claim. We're out on the subreddits. Make sure you're following rickandmorty.reddit.com. That is the official Rick and Morty subreddit. Brandon's a mod, so he's got all the inside info, including where you can find the cold opens from every episode every Friday. Make sure you check those out. It's great. You never know what you'll find there. And there's great conversations, live conversations, as well as post-show discussions, all available on the subreddit. We also have our own subreddit, Rick and Morty podcast.reddit.com. It's not quite as exciting, but it is there. Finally, we have our website, rickandmortypod.com. We have video versions of the podcast where you can see Brandon do all kinds of like cool facial expressions and sometimes freeze and then not say anything for a significant period of time. That's all available at youtube.com/apathetic enthusiasm.
Great.
Finally, a big thanks to our patrons at patreon.com/apathetic enthusiasm for continuing to support this and all of our podcast endeavors. If you want to be a patron, you can head out there. You can get bonus stuff. We do post shows that you can only see over on the Patreon. So thanks to everybody that supports us there. All right. Welcome. Brandon, you're good. You're here. There maybe is a Monday Night Football game with my favorite team that's happening at the same time we're recording this. I'm not going to let that distract me.
You took your jersey off, you loser.
I took my jersey. I did, and depending on how the game goes, there may be a moment where I have to put the jersey back on because they scored 14 points in the opening while I was wearing the jersey. They have scored nothing since. So, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about Rick and Morty, and the way we always like to start is with a segment that we call Semi-Pertinent News.
Semi-pertinent news.
Good job. Great.
Semi-pertinent news.
You came in slow, kind of ramped it up. Never know what you're gonna get with semi-pertinent news.
I didn't know. I was trying to think of a different song, and I was in my head. I couldn't get to the right key in time. So I just hummed at you.
You just shared more musical knowledge than I will ever have in my life. keys. I don't know what that is. But speaking of music, the news that I want to make sure that we talk about is obviously if you've watched the episode 4 from season 7, that's Amorte. We're going to talk all about it here in just a minute. But towards the end of that episode, there was a fantastic cover of a song from Oasis. It's called Live Forever, and it was featuring Katami and Ryan Elder. Ryan Elder, longtime friend of the podcast, as well as composer of Rick and Morty. And yeah, so they have released this track out to all of your favorite music streaming services. I know it's out on Spotify. I'm assuming it's on like Apple Music. Does Tidal carry Rick and Morty songs? I don't know. Somebody has to let me know. But it's out there. I think you can also buy it on like iTunes, things like that. But it's a great song, and it's got me excited for, again, this potential that we're going to be getting some more tracks throughout the season. They've done this for a few seasons now, where you're not really waiting for like a full soundtrack release, like on pressed vinyl, like you have that you bought, I don't know, like in this Adult Swim Fest or something like that.
Right.
You can just get them the next day on your favorite music streaming services. So I don't know, like it's not necessarily an original song, but it's still cool. Like it's still a good song that you can listen to.
I would say I like that version of the song better than the original version. And I don't say that
right.
often.
Ryan McGovern doesn't listen to this podcast. You can bash Oasis all you want.
All along the Watchtower, great cover, right? You know, this one is also a great cover. I put this one up there. Also, Devo's cover of a Neil Young song is very good.
Just some of Brandon's favorite covers. That's what we're talking about in semi-pertinent news today.
Well, so yeah, we don't have a whole lot of semi-pertinent news this week.
No.
Live Forever, that's a great little bit. It's actually very pertinent, I think, too. But Halloween was just this last weekend, and not even weekend, like in the middle of the week. And of course, some people celebrate it in different ways than others. And to bring us that news, Travis, I'm going to ask you to talk about the Dan Harmon social media minute.
Hey, I didn't know that he was setting me up for the Dan Harmon social media minute. See how bad I am with music, everybody? Like, it's not a bit. I'm just terrible. All right, Dan Harmon social media minute. Here we are. We're in luck because Dan actually posted something between last week and this week. He did post one post on Halloween for his Instagram, and this is captioned, "I'm ready to settle up. Can you break a giant penny?" And it is a picture of Dan Harmon at a bar, probably his favorite hangout, his favorite watering hole.
Watering hole, yeah.
And he's just sitting at a bar in a polo shirt with a ski mask that looks like an improvised Batman mask a little bit, like not quite a full cowl, but yeah, it's a Batman-esque mask. Yeah, and referencing an old Batman comic with the giant penny reference. So
That's
there
right.
you have it.
Woo!
Dan Harmon posted on socials, and we talked about it in the Dan Harmon social media minute.
There it is. Good job. Thanks, Dan Harmon, for letting us talk about your Instagram.
Yeah, of
post.
course we get express written consent from Dan Harmon before each and every social media minute.
We
that
say
definitely happens.
Are you cool with this one, or do you want us to talk about this other one?
No. Wait till next week. I got a real smoke show for you to talk about.
I don't know if we can wait till next week, Dan, Mr. Harmon.
I told you to always call me Mr. Harmon.
Anyways, that's
Schraub calls me Dan.
And even him on a limited basis.
All right,
okay.
that's it for semi-pertinent news. We have a phenomenal episode to talk about. So when we come back, we are going to break down all the themes and other interesting bits from yet another episode of Rick and Morty right after these messages. All right, everybody, we are back, and that can only mean one thing. It is now time to get into my favorite segment. It's the main thing.
'Cause maybe you're gonna be the main thing that saves me. After all, it's your main thing, whoa. Maybe. If you've
I'll
ever
never
played-
forget, like, 7th grade. I made a mixtape off the radio.
Yeah,
Wonderwall was, like, the first or second track on there. Man,
always,
takes me back.
always,
Takes
always
me
remember
back.
it. I'll have you know that if you ever play Wonderwall on Rock Band, that's how you hit all those notes in that song. Is you, as maybe gonna be the one that saves me. After all, that's that's all,
That's it.
That's
It's all,
there you
it's
go.
all gamified.
100% expert. Okay.
That's right. Middle of season 7, nearly the middle. 4 episodes in, and man, this feels like a real return to form for me. With an episode, as I burp while talking like Rick would. This is an episode called "That's Amorte." Air date 11/5/23, November 5th, 2023. Written by Heather Ann Campbell, huge fan, friend of the podcast.
Yeah.
Directed by Lucas Gray, guest starring Katomi. Yeah, and it's a phenomenal episode. That's it. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. Thanks, everybody.
What is our bronopsis this week, Brandon?
Bruh, that's some good spaghetti.
That's some good spaghetti.
Mm,
Our
mm.
synopsis. Sometimes it's better not to know. Yeah.
That's it. That's a good synopsis. That is our synopsis. We both worked on that. We took about 20 minutes each.
20 minutes. And then
we-
we broke it down. We did some
Yep.
brainstorming session.
Right. Sticky notes. We throw as many ideas as we could on sticky
Venn
notes. Put 'em up on.
diagrams.
Yep.
Yeah, we did a good job.
Yeah. So let's get into it.
Couple of things before we get into the actual episode itself. First and foremost, this episode is pretty heavy. It deals with some serious topics, and there's some trigger warnings. A lot of talk about suicide, right? So if you are struggling with that, if you're listening to this, 988 in the United States, suicide crisis hotline. Please talk to somebody. We're going to talk about this topic in a light way, but I know that for a lot of people, that is not a light topic. So if this is not the episode you want to listen to because of that, I totally understand. If you're in a better place, but yeah, please talk to somebody if you or somebody you know is struggling. And then the second thing I want to talk about before we talk about the episode itself is sort of the lead up into this episode and sort of the promotional material that has teased at this episode, because I feel like I had a feeling that this was, and we talked about this in our season 7 speculation spectacular. I don't know. There's a lot. It's a lot of alliteration. The only promotional images that we got early on was Rick with his like tray of spaghetti. We're like, okay, that's probably important, maybe. And then when they put out the actual like season teasers, you had this still image of like Morty hugging Rick, and there's like tons of spaghetti references all around it. So this was an episode I was really excited for before it even came out. I don't know, what were your thoughts in advance of the episode?
I wasn't. I don't know.
You didn't care.
I wasn't. I wasn't ambivalent. I think is
Yeah.
the word for it. Well, like it could be good, but I didn't really know what to expect necessarily, and so yeah, I know it's part of like the lead up and a lot of the promo material, but it was never like something that I'm like, okay, this is the thing to look for. Maybe it's because I got the Rick head last year, and and Wormageddon wasn't that much of a part of the season, that like
Sure.
I wasn't as maybe hyped up for any pre-season marketing materials quite yet.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I still go back to like the Pickle Rick season and the amount of hype and excitement surrounding Pickle Rick and how much promotional and like merchandise like was tied to that it was like, okay, this is gonna be huge. Obviously it was like the only preview content that we had for a long time between animatics at a Comic-Con and then the actual episode's release. And it still remains to be like a phenomenal episode of Rick and Morty. And I think fans will probably feel the same way about this in terms of just how out there this is. I've seen a lot of positive feedback so far on the episode itself. What were your initial thoughts after watching the episode? How did you feel about it?
What I liked it. I liked it. It was one of those episodes where you watch it the first time and you like it the first time, and
Yeah.
then but you also want to go back and pick out some other details once you kind of meander through the darkness of it all.
Yeah.
But you know, I we received because we're getting screeners. Maybe we'll talk about that later. But we are getting screeners for each week now, and they also toss some spoilers in there, things that you're not supposed to talk about as far as embargo goes, and so I saw the spoiler that oh well, it's people. Okay, that's a secret ingredient, and so I was then kind of excited to see the episode, to be like, okay, yeah, like Soylent Green, that's a whole thing.
Yeah.
I like those types of stories. Cool, yeah, let's get into it. And I wasn't disappointed. There's lots of good funny lines in it. We get really a taste now of the new Morty voice.
Yeah. And
taste,
that a taste. Oh, like a nice bolognese. Yeah, that's one. For me, I think a lot of the criticism people have had of season 7 so far, one of those is, where is Morty? They felt like Morty hadn't been as involved in the show, hadn't been, almost felt like more of a background character in the first 3 episodes. Morty is very much in this episode. It very much feels like a Rick and Morty episode. You get whole sequences with Morty and no Rick, things like that. Juriki, that episode has a little bit of that with Morty, but I think this is more so. I don't know. I think the blend of just twisted concept with, people that commit suicide turning into spaghetti and it being delicious and the family eating it. That is such a dark premise that it feels very Rick and Morty in that way. The way Morty tries to make it better and ends up making it way worse also very much feels like a classic Rick and Morty trope. So some of those things, as I'm watching the first half of the episode, I'm like, this feels very much like a quote-unquote classic Rick and Morty episode. Traveling to another planet, causing problems. Throw in an emotional montage at the end with some sweet Ryan Elder music. It's an instant classic for me.
Can you go wrong? I don't think you can go wrong with some Ryan Elder music.
That's right.
So we do want to talk about some of these themes throughout the episode. One of the microphone.
Punched my microphone. Sorry.
One of the first things that we want to talk about is, after Morty goes back, gets invited back to the planet. Do you have ramps? Like, this is a ramp, the wobbly foil thing. Once he goes back to the Kepler planet, aka the spaghetti planet, talking to the president, talking to our cabinet, and then them being like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna use our citizens for to make more spaghetti, Mortios, eventually." And then when Morty finds out, Rick takes him back to the planet. The place is depressing. They dyed the sun institutional gray, which is pretty impressive, actually. And then all the knocks at Discovery
Yeah.
and like reality television. Anyways, like that government pushing their finger a little bit on the scale to make sure their economy keeps going. The government willing to sacrifice their citizens for profit. We have this here as our first note. What do you think about that, Travis?
Yeah, this is an episode that really does kind of hint at, have a lot of undertones of some pretty dark topics, pretty heavy topics. That idea that the government is willing to sell out its citizens for profit, for financial gain. It's really dark and really depressing to think about, but also it's sort of a thing that a lot of people think about in modern society, right? And the idea of corrupt government, things like that, leaders that put themselves over their people. Like I think that is all sort of hinted at, it's or acted out throughout the better part of the episode, and they can do it in a way. I mean, we just came off of Air Force Wong, where we have the American president, getting into his own sorts of classic mischief. If this had been a version of an episode where the problem took place on Earth, and that president was the one doing all this stuff, I think it would have played very differently. I think it would have felt different. But because this was a near identical, planet that had human-looking aliens, but had very minor differences. One of them being suicidal people turned into spaghetti. Yeah, that's all you had to say. And anyway, I just think that it plays different, but allows them to show sort of like a fascist society that the fascism is we're gonna sell our people as spaghetti to have control and do what we want to do.
I would agree with you, right? Because the president that we have, right, is known. It's a known character.
Yeah.
So Morty getting invited to a new president to talk to her. She's new to us. We don't know what her intentions are. Since we don't have that preconceived notion of who she is and what kind of silliness and hijinks ensue around her, we don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
So I think that is effective. One of the things I thought about is the fact that willingness to sacrifice their citizens for profit. A note that Tanya says, right? She's the old lady who's about to die. She sends a video, and then it's spaghetti, right? And that's what Morty is first eating when he's invited to the president's office. And she says something which is now that euthanasia is legal, right?
Now that I'm allowed to die or whatever.
Yeah. And so I think it's interesting that they don't really talk about this explicitly or directly after this point in time, but the fact that they only made it legal because they knew it would make them money.
Yeah.
So I think that is just kind of a little dark note there. Coincidentally, they won't legalize marijuana yet federally, even though it makes a shit ton of money. I don't get it, but whatever. Well,
that's for another podcast. And then on the flip side, another theme that you have and mostly played out by the Smith family at the dinner table is this idea of people, consumers, sort of turning a blind eye or being willing to, have willful ignorance about the things that they're either buying or that they're consuming. So in this case, it's spaghetti that's made from people. I think there's a reference early on in the episode talking about hot dogs or something like that. But yeah, there's that's a thing. I don't know if this is like a veganism spin or something like that, right? But the reality is we eat a lot of food. We eat a lot of food in a lot of different forms, and sometimes it's so processed and packaged that it doesn't even resemble, the things that it came from. And so in that way, it's really easy for people to disassociate and say, "Oh, that's just a hamburger. That's not a cow." Like that's which is I think that's actually something that Heather Ann Campbell says in the inside the episode is she references like, yeah, you can eat a cheeseburger, but then when you're like looking a cow in its eyes, suddenly it's a little bit harder to sort of disassociate those things.
Yeah, and Harmon says in that same inside the episode about the yeah, like everybody likes hot dogs, but if you tell people, show them how it's made, you're gonna ruin 4th of July or whatever, right?
Yeah,
You're gonna ruin
exactly.
the barbecue. And I mean it's true. Like we make ourselves ignorant to the factories and how animals are slaughtered and packaged and made for our consumption. It's a fact. But damn it, don't we all love meat so much, right? But
we're gonna get comments from the vegans this week.
there are those folks who hunt, who have their cattle. They they have chickens and they have pigs and they eat all that stuff, right? And there's no shame on that. Relatives who've been raised in that kind of environment, my grandparents, I'm sure you've had family at some point.
My granddad lived on the farm and grew up doing that. Yeah.
Like, you start off at a young age, like preparing killing an animal so you can eat it for dinner, right? But now we're in a big city, we're big city boys, and I don't like I was in the shower the other day and there's like a little tiny spider that was like crawling on the wall, and I was like, you can do it, buddy. You can get up. And I was
rooting for him.
I'm rooting for you, little tiny spider. And like he had like one little broken arachnid leg, but he's really trying
to get up that water spout.
I'm like, I could wash this down the drain right now, but I felt bad for him or her. Or it, I don't know, I don't know spider gender.
Don't
but
misgender
like,
the spider.
But that's the thing. Like I like going fishing. Like I do like going fishing. Thankfully, I haven't caught anything in a long time because I don't want to break the necks and I can't do it. But I'm okay with eating it if it's at the store, if it's a consumer item.
If it's provided to me in fish stick form, breaded. Yeah. Frozen. Yeah, completely separated from it.
And I think a lot of people are like that, right? I think a lot of us are like that, and I think that's what this episode is trying to say. We like eating a ribeye steak, but we don't want to know all of the memories that cow had up until the day it was slaughtered.
Yeah, it suddenly becomes less appetizing. So, in an episode where we talk about governments willing to sacrifice their people, consumers turning a blind eye to terrible stuff. We also have this theme of spaghetti. It's a lot of spaghetti talk. Some very specific concepts about types of sauces and putting, I don't know, the starch content of the noodles. I don't know. A lot of spaghetti talk, but that shifts quickly into social collapse. So it's a complicated episode. Is all I'm saying. There's a lot of things going on.
The social collapse piece. Once the capitalism takes over, and they have to sustain what is an unsustainable product, right?
Yeah.
You are going to run out of people who want to kill themselves.
Yeah. And that's when you need chunky boys.
What a weird sentence.
Yeah, that's a thing that you said and it's recorded on the internet.
But substitute that for any kind of unsustainable ecosystem, right? We're talking about people here, obviously, but like if the rate of breeding things does not match the rate of things you're losing, then your model of capitalism is going to fail inevitably.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
which is what happens, right? When poverty shoots through the roof, and I think I know I'm kind of going a little bit here and a little bit there, but you talk about like cities that pop up across the U.S. over our history, that like where like tourism and markets are like, yeah, whoa, yeah, like build the city up. Oh, the city gets built up so quickly, and then the market goes away. Whatever their
It's not sustainable, right? It's like sustainability is not.
and then it collapses, Travis.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
the
And
steel
it falls,
worker.
falls apart
um,
like Fred blocks.
like Fred blocks. Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted to say with that is it collapses. Society, it collapses.
It collapses. All
The
right.
point derailed me.
Do you want to talk
Sure.
about euthanasia? Is that a thing? You have that added here in the themes. I mean, it's there. It is.
Yeah,
talked
I
about.
do I do want to talk about that, Travis, because society collapses, and when um yeah, how do I want to bring this up? I guess I kind of brought it up with the Citizens for Profit thing. They only made it legal because they were going to make money off of it. But you know, from a perspective of someone who's like they're on their deathbed, or they're like they've I'll tell a story. Some dude like 15 years ago, like happy life, nothing wrong with him, perfectly healthy. He was just like, you know what, I'm good. I did everything I wanted to do, and then he killed himself. It wasn't a depression thing. He even made like a website for himself, like, hey, look, here's all my memories. Here's like somebody sustained this. Like this is my life here. I'm good to go. And to me, like that's honorable, and like that's that person's choice, and I respect that choice. And so I find it's weird that we can't make that choice legally. So I think it doesn't go that deep into that in this episode, but it is there, just that concept of like by the end of it, they're like, look at him, he's doing it. He's doing it on his own.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because there's a little bit of that like government coercion toward like almost incentivizing it or something, right? Or like doing things in society to make that more of an appealing outcome. But I think that's really interesting how it differs with is it Fred or Frank? What's the guy at the end?
Fred Block.
Fred. Where he's like rebelling against it, and he's taking that ownership of himself, that he will not be part of this machine, this consumerist, spaghetti outfit. I think he has a line like integrity is enduring your pain or something like that, like, right, where he's like, I can live with myself because even if I am in pain, because I'm not selling out to this corrupt, situation. So yeah, I think that idea of ownership or autonomy, it comes through in both of those examples, really.
Yeah, good point. All right. Well, so those are our main themes
in this hilarious episode of an animated comedy.
Hilarious episode, and it was hilarious. Which brings us to some happier favorite bits. We don't have to talk about people killing themselves.
We'll get to those. They're in there.
It's a little bit spicy, a little sweet, a little bit spicy, a little sweet. All that dinner chatter.
It's great. Didn't you have a job interview today, Dad? I bombed it, but nothing this spaghetti can't make up for. it's funny because of why it's there. This wholesome, like everybody's together. It's the family unit coming together to eat at the table, to share a meal prepared by their grandfather, who's, conversation is happening. It like they really sell it up so they could just crash it down as hard as possible when they reveal what it is that they're actually eating. I think the duality of that is very well done.
Yeah, with Rick kneeling, his knee up on like a bench,
Yeah.
with the pasta plate on top of the knee, spooning it out of the body.
Yeah.
The good,
Just
good,
laid out on the floor of the garage.
We spagats as much as you can spaghetti.
The amount of like bad Italian, like cheesy impressions and things like that. It's that line, we spagats as much as you can spaghetti. Like that's still when everybody's at the high. That's before it all comes crashing down, before they see what's behind the curtain. Yeah.
These are some of the lines that we're going to use in our daily lives. In the future, right?
We're gonna forget 4 years from now when we're being like, "Don't even trip, dog," We're gonna be like, "Pass the Parmesan cheese and we spagats all you can spaghetti." Like we're gonna forget about the themes of suicide and government, corruption.
And I'm gonna look at you and say, all you had to say.
That's all you had to say. That to me is like a subtle thing in this episode that I think is so well done, and I didn't even realize they call back to it in the end until like the third time I watched this episode. But there's something about the culture, something about the way this alien planet works, that if you just give a simple, frank explanation of what you're doing, even if it's not like morally okay to do, in the society, the response is, it's all you had to say, and they just excuse you away. It happens with the security guard.
Yep.
It happens with the doctor when they're in the morgue, and then again with Rick at the end of the episode. And I wrote it so not even the fully at the end, when they're working on the Chunky Boys, and Morty's trying to like charades a claw-like hand that they can. He says,
So
maybe give them a claw-like hand they can stab themselves with. And Rick's response is, all you had to say. So I don't know. Maybe he's spent more time on this planet than we really really want to think about. I don't know.
I caught the all you had to say the first time around with the doctor and the security guard. I didn't catch the all you had to say from Rick until the second or third time I watched it.
Yeah.
So I like that. Well, right before the doctor shows up, when they're in the morgue, Rick showing Morty the difference between a murdered corpse and a suicide corpse. The Rick shows him the spaghetti torso, and it's like, here comes the choo-choo plane.
Yeah, like which is it's just so much worse when like you're realizing the context that it's in and things like that. A great bit from this that I think they spent a decent amount of time playing with, because it is short and kind of throwaway, but the Men in Black mind eraser bit where Rick accidentally erases his own memories instead of the memories of the doctor. The way Rick freaks out in that moment until Morty fixes it, and the way Rick says, it's embarrassing, what does he say? It's always embarrassing. It's always embarrassing. It's not like that. Using the word always means it didn't just happen one other time. Like, it's happened enough times that it's always embarrassing when that happens. I don't know. I thought that was funny.
So there's this bit, you won't get overwhelmed, and then insist on going to their funeral. Then it immediately cuts to the funeral. Classic, classic
classic
cutaway gag.
classic cutaway gag.
I like that we have this one on here when after Morty spoils what is it where the spaghetti comes from. Everyone's pissed off at Morty. He's like, "Oh, everyone hates me now." And then there's a beat, and then Jerry says, "Oh, sorry. Good night, Morty."
Yeah, good night, Morty. Nobody refuting that they hate him. I also really like how Beth and Jerry, to an extent, are like forced to parent, but they're like not excited about it. They're like, yes, you quote unquote technically did the right thing, but and I think as parents we've been there, right? Where we're like, yes, I know morally you are calling me out on something I did and you are correct. However, I really wanted to do whatever it was, and now you're making my life worse. Like,
I don't want to do this. You are making me do this.
yes.
A couple notes at that scene, the early scene when they're first eating the spaghetti. Oh no. A couple times, anytime there's like talking to Jerry, where he's like, "Just tell me, is it people or is it not? Like, tell me so I can be mad at."
I just need to know how much I have to pretend to be disgusted or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
first the octopus, now this. Like,
He said early on too, like, I was fine with it either way. I think.
And then he makes that comment, can we just join the fascist half of the country? They get to do more. I like everybody quickly telling him no, but yeah, that's a Jerry move if there was one.
I like that little dismay of the family, and it shows like little sects of like society, little subsets of society with like there are people, who are like, I mean, it tastes really good. Just tell me it's ethical, and then I won't have any problem eating it, right? So
Yeah,
there's
exactly.
that other aspect of it.
No, they're free range, so it's fine.
Last week
Spaghetti.
on last week tonight with John Oliver, last week or the week before, they talked about chocolate, and like basically the chocolate trade, where like they get all the cocoa beans.
Leave it
and
to John Oliver to put that episode out right before Halloween.
Yeah, and how bad it is. And there's this one chocolate company, they did like a documentary back in the mid '90s about that trade, and so they try to have like no child labor doing for their chocolate company now. I think it's like Tony's or something like that. But even their like wrapper says we can't guarantee that there's no kids that have been used in this, right?
Yeah, that's
I'm
awful.
like, man, these Hershey's Kisses, right?
really changes your perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
We talked about the wobbly ramp for the little pod that they send to pick up Morty. I love the way they animated that because it reminds me of those like carnival things where it's like the rope ladder and you're like trying to keep your balance on it. It just really looked like one of those things. I thought that was funny. Yeah, ethical spaghetti when Morty comes back and he's pumped for the ethical spaghetti. That is the same scene where we get the Parmesan callback or Parmesan. Yeah.
You point out some of the spaghetti planet changes. We talked some of these during the show. The one thing we didn't talk about, we talked about Discovery, we talked about the institutional gray, which I want to ask Boothby about. But the most scenic jump was the one thing we didn't bring up.
Yeah, they changed it to most scenic jump bridge. And they added all the spaghetti strainers down underneath the bridge. It's such a dark like visual. Like some concept artist was having to work on that, and they're just like, oh, it's a living. Like
you know what I had an issue with the mechanics of that because
I'm sure you did.
because if somebody jumps from that building and they land in the strainer, like the rest of their body is going to be part of it too. It's only their intestine and their blood that coagulates to create that
Yeah.
the sauce, right?
Yeah.
And so you're going to have like arms, you're going to have legs, hair. It's not. It is not an effective way to.
It's not
to
an
get
effective
spaghetti
system. You're right.
out of a person.
You're right. And I think that ultimately probably was the downfall of society.
Yeah, probably. They tried to make it easier, but they made it harder on themselves.
Possibly the best line, I don't know, maybe in the running for it is when Rick and Morty are talking to the president and talking about all the challenges they face with having to use suicidal people for spaghetti. And Morty says, "That's a spicy meatball." Like, yep, just another callback to bad, broken, stereotypical impressions. It's great. It's perfect.
That's
Up. Guys, we lost him again. If you're watching the video, this is what I have to live with. And if you're listening to the audio, hopefully he cuts this out. All right.
Sure, I got it. So here's what I was going to say, Travis, before you cut me off. We talk while Rick is showing Morty all the different variations of
it's like his clones, like his synthesized people.
Yeah, his meat. What he's trying to make an impossible burger, right? He talks to Morty about the one that's like it's born with incredible pain and blah blah blah, and that's why he didn't create it, because he knew he'd take issue with it. Maybe you want to explore the trolley problem at some point, Morty. The trolley problem being the ethical thought experiments involving stylized ethical dilemmas of whether to sacrifice one person to save a larger number.
Yeah, it's a nice little think piece that they throw in there at that moment of the episode.
There's a moment in there also. This isn't a favorite bit, but I put it in there, like talking about Kevin Neary or something like that.
Yeah, I had to Google that name.
Yeah, and he was a cult leader. So Rick is like, you can never say no to me, like 2 weeks. Like, oh no, he's like, who am I, Kevin Neary? Like, oh,
let's okay, we're gonna talk about that in our best and worst parts, because
Okay.
I want to expand on that piece a little bit.
Great.
We talked about the claw-like hand bit. All you had to say. The Chunky Boys themselves were just kind of like a weird, like the process where it they had full-on assembly line and like delivery drones with cardboard boxes that say it's people on it, like all of that, like such just like a chaotic, dark, like what have they become to get spaghetti, like the most like basic food. Like, I don't know, it's wild, it's crazy. Yeah.
And talking about Soylent Green, it's people, and at the very end, it's just boxed up as it's people.
Yeah.
They're not even trying to like cover it with Mortios anymore. It's people.
One of the last lines I like is when they're kind of closing up the episode. Rick says, "You're going to be the Kitty Hawk of our Wright brothers flight, or you're fill in the blank of your fill in the planet." As he realizes that there are beings from all across the galaxy that don't necessarily have a Kitty Hawk and Wright brothers, but yeah,
True.
low effort, minimum effort whatsoever.
Well,
let's
let's go into our best and worst parts of this episode. The never say no promise for 2 weeks. So kind of brought that up a second ago. Travis, go into it.
Yeah. So, and I want to call back to something, and it's sort of like, I don't know if we can even talk about this, right? But I'm gonna risk it. So you talked about the fact that we are getting screeners for these episodes now. Part of getting screeners is there are certain things you can't talk about. There's embargoes on things that you can and can't talk about. For the most part, when we record our episodes before they air, we're not doing spoiler-free reviews because we release our episodes after the show comes out, and we pretty much talk about whatever we want to from the episode because the episode's out, right? But one thing of note is that we do not have screeners for next week's episode. It's been made known in advance. Yes, we'll get you screeners for each week's episodes. You won't have them for episode 5. For whatever reason, that's all we know.
That's right. That's all we know.
And I think that's safe to say. Like,
it is safe to say because in the preview for next week, it's saying like it's so secret that we're not going to spoil you on what's coming up next week yet.
So here's where I come back to this line in the episode, because there have been multiple times where the show has used the number of episodes, real time, different references to create integrations and other fun little moments in the show. One thing I think about is the Morty adventure cards, right? Like every 10th adventure is a Morty adventure or something like that, right? So I think it's really interesting that in this episode they say, Morty says, "You help me with this, and I won't question your stuff anymore. I won't go looking for the problem with everything we do." And Rick's like, "And you can't say no to me." And he's like, "No, I'm not going to do that." And he's like, "For 2 weeks." And Morty's like, "Fine." It just so happens over the next 2 weeks, in real time, like we have an episode that's coming out that is so secretive, they won't give press screeners and they won't give the general public any, scenes from it. So, Hype level through the roof. Like, I thought this was a good episode. I can't wait to see what happens in the next episode, because I think whether it's like Rick Prime centric and they're going to do like a real central lore episode, or whether it's like the return of a character or like a storyline that we've kind of forgotten about for a while, something's going to happen. I think it's going to be big.
Yeah. I agree with you. But I don't know if that makes this one of my best parts. Maybe I disagree with you there.
That's fine. It's best or worst. And I wrote the show notes. So
as a standalone, for this episode and in a bubble, this episode's bubble, I'd say it's not one of the best. I would say it's a mediocre.
That's fair, and that's why I included Frank's life montage in the cover song as the other best part of this episode.
Best and worst part of this episode.
Why do you think it's one of the worst parts?
Well, so I think this is going to take us down maybe a little bit of a rabbit hole of discussion, maybe a slight rabbit hole of discussion.
Okay.
So Frank's life montage, sung to the cover of "Live Forever" by Oasis. It goes through his life flashes before his eyes. Yeah, there are some really cool things throughout the whole thing, right? He's a baby, sees his parents, he meets a girl in high school, then he goes to college, he leaves her, then he eventually fails college because he sucks at college, and then he moves back in with his parents.
He's not an architect.
His parents
thought he wanted to be, but he's not.
He thought he wanted to be. His parents die, blah, 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 blah. Then he gets back with this girl that he dumped after she's married and has 2 kids. She gets a divorce, which sucks, and then they're happy, and then she dies, and he looks at the skyscrapers in the background, and they're his designs from when he was a kid all the way to he was an adult.
Yeah.
There's some Fred blocks in there as well. So I like a lot of the details that are in there. When he's a kid, he's drawing those buildings. When he's in college, he's looking to his left and right, and they're like all like studious students, and they're like studying.
They're like stressed out, and yeah.
And he's drawing his buildings again. He turns in his final. He gets an F on it. That's why he drops out of college. and then he finds his real passion, which is making Fred blocks, and he becomes successful, and then he ruins a marriage and all that good stuff. But then at the very end, as he's sitting by the graveside of his wife and parents, then he looks in the background. So I love those little details. The other little details, which makes it also the worst part, is that so he steals the wife from this other guy. She had a husband. She had 2 kids. Well, observant viewers of the show, and you, Travis,
Yeah, and me. Yeah, upon 3 viewings of it.
Have pointed out that the funeral that Morty goes to at the very start of the episode is for the same guy who was married to Frank, who Frank stole from.
Yeah.
You can see in the church, there's 2 kids sitting in the front row. Now they're grown up kids.
Yeah, they're
they
the adult children but they look similar in age difference and different notes to the kids that she shows in that like smartphone picture.
Yeah, I wasn't sure at first, and you can go to Reddit. You can see what that image looks like to compare and contrast. There are some difference in colors, but they're fading colors for like between like the guy who killed himself and his older self. What really sold me was in the picture that I keep wanting to say Wendy shows on the phone, the husband, her, the 2 kids. The daughter has this black hairband on. And so if you look at that picture, then look at her in the church, she has that same hairstyle, that same black hairband. Yeah. And same thing with the older boy in the church. Like,
yeah, I think it's too close to be coincidental. It's too close to be an accident. Like, when you look at the framed photo at the funeral, and all the pictures of the husband in the past, his hairstyle, it's dark, like almost shaved on the side, and then like a lighter tone on top. I don't think I've ever seen them do that kind of like look with hair on this show. Like it definitely looks like it's an intentional thing that they've done to tie those characters together within the episode.
And that's not why this is the worst part. I think what is really,
I was gonna say that attention to detail and like hidden thing, great. I think is phenomenal. Yeah.
It's the uncertain feeling that I haven't fully explored with myself yet. Of Frank, he gets to die on his own terms, and like he's had a full life and a happy life, and like early on in his youth he went through problems, and then he became a successful Fred Block's businessman, and then he got everything that he wanted, right? And he got to die happy, but he ruined somebody's, partial. We don't know the whole story, and maybe nobody knows because it's just a cartoon character. But like on the opposite end is this guy who, like, he was the first person to be eaten. So Frank he gets to kill himself. He gets to end a spaghetti trade. Nothing happens to him, but yet the guy who started it all is the guy whose life was partially ruined by him. Like it's a really fucked up circle.
It is. Yeah.
In
a way that only Rick and Morty can keep you.
Yeah, it's like the piss guy, right? Like that's like another, like, oh man, that's fucked up. But anyway.
My other worst part is, and this is the second time this season I've gone with the post credits tag. The bit about vacuum cleaner bags, it just didn't land for me. That's it.
It landed for me. I cracked up at it.
Okay, cool.
We're a massive disagreement with this week, Travis, about our best and worst parts.
That's why we're breaking up and never doing this podcast. No, that's not happening, everybody.
No,
those are our best and worst parts. Best for some of us, worst for some of us. But we want to hear from you. We want to know what you thought about this episode. Did you like it? Did you like the amount of Morty that we got in this episode? Did you feel like it was too dark? Did you feel like this was a great episode, an instant classic? Let us know those thoughts. We shout out all those social media links at the top of the show. Let us know. You can send us an email. You can leave us a review. Or in our listener suggestions and short out segment, you can do like at Power Scissor did on our YouTube channel. That's right. You can watch this episode as well on YouTube. And I'm gonna read this verbatim, and then we're gonna talk about it.
We're gonna talk about it because I saw this comment too.
First, they said you had to be smart to enjoy Rick and Morty, and I did not speak out because I was smart and I enjoyed Rick and Morty. Then they said we must rate McDonald's for Szechuan sauce, and I did not speak out because I do not frequent McDonald's and I did not care about sauce fiascos. Then they said the show just isn't the same and the writers have lost their way, and I did not speak out because I enjoyed both types of episodes. Then they came for me and said Rick and Morty is a helpful vehicle for men's mental health and no longer an animated comedy. And there was no one left to listen, for thy show had jumpeth thy shark. Martin T. Neptune.
Thank you. Thank you for
Beautifully
those words.
written. Thank you for your comment. I don't think the show's jumped the shark.
Oh,
I disagree with that note. And the Szechuan sauce was actually pretty good. Not worth freaking out in McDonald's for.
No,
not as good as like there's a recent sauce they just came out with. It's like a mamba sauce or something. It's spicy.
Oh.
It's a little spicy, a little sweet, a little spicy, a little sweet. It's good. You can go check it out while you get your Disney 100 collectible characters in your Happy Meal. McDonald's is not a sponsor of this podcast.
No.
I don't know. You think the show's jumped the shark?
No, I don't think it's jumped the shark. I would have stopped talking about the show if I didn't enjoy it.
We would have discontinued this podcast. For those of you that don't know, the show Happy Days included an episode where Arthur Fonzarelli, also known as the Fonz, jumped his motorcycle over a tank with a shark in it. It was critically panned as the end of quality episodes for Happy Days, and the beginning of the term "jump the shark."
Editor's note: I think there's a correction. He didn't jump over it with a motorcycle. He was jet skiing in his jacket
in his leather jacket,
and jumped a shark.
We'll have to find out and talk about it all throughout our Patreon post show, which we are going to head over and record right now. That is going to wrap it up for this episode. Thank you everyone for listening, and when we come back, we will be breaking down an episode that we know nothing about.
Nothing.
Very excited to check it out, and we will get that out to you as soon as possible. Potentially delayed, I don't know. We have to figure that out. But very excited for that. Thank you so much for listening. Rate, review, subscribe, do all the things if you're new here. And until next week, I'm Travis.
And I'm Brandon. Thank you so much.